I just know from a little boy falling in love with this game to where I am now, and this love has grown further. I've put a lot into it, and I've got a lot more to give. So with that being said, never had any doubt that I wouldn't be here, that this deal wouldn't get done and be right for the both of us and be right, as I said, for the organization and everybody invested. So I'm just thankful.
That's Dak Prescott from earlier today. He never had any doubt that a deal would get done with the Cowboys. He's the only one who didn't have doubt. They pushed it to the absolute limit. And Charean, he waited and waited and waited and waited and almost pushed it to the point where the Cowboys didn't give him the kind of offer that would have caused a long-term deal to be done and instead would have started the clock in motion toward his final season potentially with the Cowboys. So it's easy to say now that it's done, that he never had any doubt that it would get done. He should have had doubt that it would get done, and that's because he was as firm, as determined, and as relentless with Jerry Jones as Jerry Jones would be with someone else. That's where Dak won. He never blinked, he never gave in, and he got the contract, and now it's official, 4 years, $160 million. Celebration for Dak Prescott. Questions, though, for the Cowboys going forward with that much money soaked into one player.
Yeah, no question, Mike. And they also talked about all the money they have invested in the offensive line, at receiver, at running back, a lot on the offensive side. And really, Dan Quinn's going to have to build on that defensive side with what he can get. Frankly, because they're not going to spend big money over there aside from what they've already spent on DeMarcus Lawrence. But, you know, I was interested in what Jerry was going to say about this being the hardest negotiation he's ever done, because I think we all believe that, because Dak stuck to his guns and said, I'm not going to be talked into this by Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones. I'm not going to be talked into it. I'm going to wait. I'm going to trust my agent. And he did that. He did that last year, and he got a great deal. We've all said that. But Jerry just talked in circles when he was asked about this being the hardest negotiation he had ever done. So we really didn't get the answer we wanted out of him. But at some point, I'd like to ask him more about that, about this being such a hard negotiation. Because I guarantee you, Mike, the Cowboys never thought it would go this long. It's been over 2 years now.
So basically, Jerry answered that question the same way he'd answer pretty much any other question, talking in circles, talking about circumcising mosquitoes, and fortunately today, not getting into any barnyard activities that would be illegal in many jurisdictions. Okay, they definitely did blow this, and they misread the room. And I know for a fact that they were astounded by the resolve that Dak and his agent had. And this gets back to something that we've said the past 2 days as it relates to other quarterbacks who are going to be in a similar situation. You need to have an agent who will keep you from pouncing on an amount that seems like it's sufficient when in fact it's not. When you have other friends, family members, teammates, other people, other agents who are trying to drive a wedge between you and your agent, and that happens all the time, saying, what are you thinking? What are you doing? You should take that deal. You know, there were other agents last year when Dak suffered the broken ankle who were basically gleeful that Todd France hadn't done a long-term deal, because it's like, see, you should have done the long-term deal. Well, who's got the last laugh now? Even with the broken ankle, 4 years, $160 million, and no protections, no issues, no limitations that would keep Dak from getting that money if the ankle was still a problem. He said today the ankle will be fine. He'll be good to go. And surely, we were talking about Dr. Cooper yesterday in his cowboy hat. He's taken a close look at this ankle. Every other doctor down there is taking a look at the ankle and come to the conclusion that it's fine, or they wouldn't have done this deal.
Yeah, he had a great quote, Mike, about being ready to jump up on the stage and jog, and said, I don't think you guys were ready for that, but he was ready for that. So he does think it's healed. Now, you know, asked for a timetable when he'd be 100%. He didn't allow that. He said, the one thing I was not going to do from the start is set a timetable on this, when I'm going to get back. But when it's time to be ready, I'll be ready. And he also talked about, Mike, taking a lot of inspiration from Alex Smith. He said Alex Smith went through the same thing, only worse. And he talked to Alex Smith and really took inspiration from Alex Smith. So, you know, he learned something from Alex Smith and came back and has gone through his rehab. And by all accounts, he's doing fine in that, and had the cleanup surgery in December and should be back to healthy. Maybe not for an off-season program if they have any sort of off-season program, but at least by training camp, he should be back and good for the Cowboys, Mike.
Let's hear directly from Dak Prescott himself regarding current status of that ankle as he works his way back to 100%.
I'm ready and I'm getting close. I feel good. You saw me walk out here. I can do a lot of things that I obviously couldn't do weeks ago and even days ago that I'm doing today. So it's hard to say that I'll be ready in this time or that time, but I'll be ready when it matters, and I'll be more than healthy and better than I was before.
Amazing to think that that investment was made without knowing with certainty, with 100% certainty that he'll be good to go. But that's the risk they're taking, and it's a huge financial gamble, but it's a gamble. And I also saw that Dak resented the fact that people basically suggested he bet on himself. He gambled on himself. Right. Well, he did. He did. Let's not start developing alternate facts on what happened here. He did bet on himself. He did reject the offers that the Cowboys put on the table and went with less money and a one-year deal last year. He could have had much more security last year at the time that ankle broke. He didn't have it. He did gamble. He did wager. And, hey, I've supported him every step of the way, but don't start acting like it's something that it wasn't, guys. You did gamble, and you won. And don't act like you didn't. And I know he doesn't want to rub anyone's face in it, but you did gamble, and it worked out well.
Yeah, and he also talked about, Mike, that he owed it to other quarterbacks. He owed it to other NFL players to do what he did, to hold back, to not sign anything he didn't want to sign that Todd France, his agent, recommended he sign. So he waited, and he did gamble, and he did win. Despite the ankle injury in Week 5, he won on this, Mike, and he won really, really big. One of the best contracts in NFL history, I think you've called it. And so he did the right thing by him, and the injury didn't affect him at all.
It's not one of the best. It's the best. To have only 4 years of a commitment and to have the highest signing bonus, the highest one-year payout, $75 million, the highest full guarantee at signing, and to not have to tie yourself up for 6 years or maybe even longer doing a 6-year extension on a deal that has 1 year left. This is the best deal because it pays him more money than anyone's ever gotten at signing, and it lets him get back to the trough in 4 years or sooner. We talked about that yesterday. Probably will be back in 3 years because the clock will start ticking on the Cowboys once we get into the 2024 season. And once we get through that, he's free and clear. He can go wherever he wants to go. I want to address the issue that he owed it to other quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins made that argument, although a lot more clumsily a few years ago when justifying his refusal to accept a long-term deal from Washington. And there is a benefit to other players, but let's not make this about altruism. But baloney. This is about capitalism. And it's great that you can spin it with a straight face if you're Dak Prescott into saying, I'm doing other quarterbacks a favor. And in a roundabout way, that's a slap at the Tom Brady's of the world who don't stretch the rubber band as far as they can so others can come in behind that amount. Because think of what happens. What's happened with the Patriots and what surely is happening with the Buccaneers this year. Hey, Tom Brady's only making X. Who do you think you are? Why do you think you deserve a premium when the quarterback's not making a premium? Well, in Dallas, that argument's out the window. The Cowboys have given the quarterback a premium, and all other quarterbacks are going to be looking for that same premium. So, yes, there's an incidental benefit to other quarterbacks, but come on. I'm getting irritated the more I hear about what he said today because it's being characterized as something other than it is. It was a money grab, and that's fine. That's fine. And I guess you don't want to get to the press conference and say it was a money grab, but it was a money grab. And he also said it was never about the money, which is the ultimate proof that it was always about the money. And why shouldn't it be about the money? It's about getting compensated fully and completely for the risks you take, the sacrifices you make, and the abilities that you develop. You've got God-given abilities. You're working to their maximum level. That's what you get paid for. That's what the fans are showing up to watch and paying their money to see, and that's what people are tuning in to see. So there's nothing wrong with that. But I guess they spent some of the $160 million, Charean, on a PR specialist who fed him a bunch of crap to say today that doesn't mesh with reality.
Well, and he also said, I'm happy to be a Cowboy for life. Well, that certainly isn't what this
Are you dying
is.
in 4 years?
Yeah, right. That is not at all what this is. This is to get back to the table in 3 years, or at worst 4 years, and get even more money. So there's nothing about being a Cowboy to the end yet. Now, the greatest Cowboys in NFL history only played for the Cowboys in their NFL careers. I realize Danny White started out in the WFL, but the Danny Whites, the Tony Romos, Roger Staubach, Troy Aikman, they all spent their entire careers with the Cowboys. The Cowboys expect Dak Prescott to be there long term, to be there forever in his NFL career, but nothing is forever when you have a 4-year deal, Mike. It's a 4-year deal, period, end of story. He'll be back at the negotiating table soon enough.
Maybe he means metaphorical cowboy for life, because only a true cowboy could pull off the kind of heist that he pulled off with the NFL's version of Black Bart and Jerry Jones. So maybe that's what he means, because you're right. It's 4 more years maximum, and then they're going to have to do it again. So and again, I don't expect that he's going to disrespect Jerry Jones at this point. I don't expect that he's going to get up there and brag and boast and crow. But let's not pretend this is something other than what it is. It is exactly what it always was, and now he is a Cowboy for 4 years, and he'll make $160 million along the way. And, Charean, I want to get your thoughts on this. We talked yesterday just kind of in spitball fashion about Amari Cooper likely entering his last year with the Cowboys. I've looked at Ezekiel Elliott's contract over the next couple of years, and Sims and I talked about this today on PFT Live. Zeke's salary for next year, 2022, $12.4 million, I believe. That becomes fully guaranteed this month. Now, the $9.6 million that he's due to make this year is already fully guaranteed. There's nothing they can do about that. But what Zeke did with his contract, and this is the smart way to do the triggers for full guarantees, you don't wait until the year the money's going to be earned. You have the trigger the year before, which makes it harder to cut the guy. Because if they let him walk away now and avoid the 12.4 in 2022, they still owe him the 9.6 this year. That money's already vested. That vested at signing of the contract, or last year at this time at the latest. And the more Sims and I talked about it, and I've been scouring the rosters, and I've been brainstorming, and I've been trying to find the one guy who gets cut and possibly traded, but maybe cut, that we're going to say, holy crap, we never expected that. Sims thinks that Zeke could be the guy who gets the plug pulled on him. You got any thoughts on whether or not that happens this year? Not next year, but this year.
Yeah. Well, it's not going to be surprising to me if they do it. I will say this. I think they would go to him and try to tweak the contract, restructure the contract somehow, some way. And that very well could be done. I think they like Zeke. They like what he brings to the offense. They like the leadership that he showed last year. He was voted the Good Guy Award because he really stepped up in Zach's absence and filled in that leadership role. So they saw a lot of growth in him over the last year. I don't think they're ready, despite the salary, despite what it's going to be next year, fully guaranteed if they don't do something here. But I think they would go and try to change his contract some way, Mike, before they cut him. And I said I wouldn't be surprised if he's cut. I think I will be surprised if he's cut this year. I won't be surprised if they tweak the contract some way.
Well, but if they go to him,
I changed my mind in the middle of that.
But he says, no, I got $9.6 million fully guaranteed this year. You want to cut me, I'll go somewhere else. Now, there'll be an offset obligation in there, because I never heard there is no offset. And when there is no offset language in a contract like this, it's big news when the contract comes out. It's hard to get a term like that. But if Zeke, would be cut this week at some point before next Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, then, yeah, whatever he would make elsewhere this year, the Cowboys would get that dollar-for-dollar credit, and he'd essentially be playing for free this year, because no one's going to pay him more than $9.6 million on the open market for this year. So it's just something to keep an eye on. And another thing that occurred to me today, and this is one of the problems with and look, Jerry's been the GM of that team for over 30 years, so I guess you figure it out in time. But I feel like when you have ownership also running personnel and you start drafting really well, making good decisions about who to pick and develop those guys, and you have a coaching staff that gets the most out of them, I almost feel like they're more compelled. They feel more obligated for their own pride, for their own vanity, for their own ego to keep those guys, just so they can continue to say, we found him, we drafted him, we developed him. And maybe that does that, because look at what they paid Amari Cooper after they gave up a first-round pick to get him, $20 million a year on a 5-year deal. Look at what they paid Zeke when he held out. Look at what they're paying Dak. Now the problem is they waited too long to decide to pay him. Look at DeMarcus Lawrence. I feel like at some level they still need protection from themselves, because these players that they've drafted and developed basically become trophies that they don't want to part with, and you got to pay them to keep them.
Yeah, they let Byron Jones go last year, and I was actually kind of surprised that they let him go because he was their best corner, Mike. And so I figured they would overpay to keep Byron Jones, and they didn't. But we've seen it repeatedly with Jerry. Players he likes and he thinks are really good and are core group of players for him, he likes to keep them, and they don't walk away very often when he really wants to keep them. He's never lost a player that he truly wanted to keep. They didn't have a salary like DeMarco Murray. He said, hey, we're only paying DeMarco Murray this. If he wants more than that, he can leave. But for players he truly wants to keep, he's never lost a guy. And so, I wasn't surprised they got this Dak contract done, but it cost them. Well, it cost them in Dak because they didn't get it done 2 years ago, but it cost them with other players. They shouldn't have given Zeke the contract they gave him. They shouldn't give Amari the contract they gave him. And at some point, Mike, they've always pushed money down the road, right? They restructured deals and pushed it down the road. At some point, that comes back to bite you a little bit. And maybe it has a little bit in the past, but at some point, they're going to get bitten by that.
Well, they're pushing some more down the road. Our colleague Josh Alper texting during the show that Tyron Smith and Zach Martin and Lyle Collins all restructuring their contracts. That's presumably the simple restructuring that means you take the compensation from this year, turn a lot of it into a signing bonus, spread it out over multiple years. The only benefit from kicking cap dollars into future years, as the cap goes up, those dollars, relatively speaking, have less impact because dollar for dollar, percent by percent, they mean less because you've got more dollars you can spend. And this is the year a lot of teams are going to be kicking those dollars forward because the cap is down $15 million. And the Cowboys, by the way, saved $15.4 million. They, in doing the deal with Dak and dropping his anticipated cap number from $37.6 to $22.2, they basically offset the drop in the salary cap just with that one contract, but they still have other business that they need to do. And they still continue to believe that they are the cream of the crop in a division that has largely been crap, especially last year. A sub-500 team won it. Both Stephen Jones and Dak Prescott said that they're absolutely the team to beat in the NFC East. And I don't expect anyone to say anything different than that this time of year. This is all about optimism, and the glass is half full, even if the glass is 90% empty. But the thing about the Cowboys in recent years, and yes, they've delivered from time to time, but it seems like every year, on paper, they've got a potential championship team. Yeah. And then when it's time to go play the games, something happens. Last year, I thought they were going to be the 1 seed in the NFC. And they didn't even make it to the playoffs. So I don't put a whole lot of stock in the big talk, and I know it's for the benefit of fans who want to hear that stuff at a time of the year when games aren't being played. But, we've seen it and heard it enough times. For me, it just goes in one ear and out the other, Charean.
Yeah, and we still have a long way to go, Mike, in free agency in the draft. I mean, what's Washington going to do at quarterback? I mean, they could end up, if they get Deshaun Watson, do you not think they're going to be the favorites for the division? Certainly, they're probably going to be the favorites for the division going forward. So we'll see what happens. But let's, look at the Cowboys since '95. We know that's the last time they went to the Super Bowl, last time they went to the NFC Championship game. Since then, they're 4-10 in the postseason with 10 playoff appearances. So they've really struggled, Mike, in the postseason, getting to the postseason. Dak in his career is 1-2 in the postseason, so he has something to prove there if he's going to get more money the next time he goes to the negotiating table.
And the folks at PointsBet agree with the Cowboys. They are the team to beat, -105 favorite. Got to bet $105 to win 100. Everyone else is in plus territory. But that's the way it is every year. There's still that shine on the helmet, the silver helmet with the blue star. It's America's team, and that's always going to make people view the Cowboys differently. There's always going to be a greater sense of anticipation, and there'll be a full slate of primetime games for the Cowboys this year, and they know they'll have Dak Prescott this year and for at least 3 more years beyond that. The question is, how many more years beyond that will it go? And you make a great point. Deshaun Watson could end up being in Washington. The Eagles could take a quarterback with the 6th overall pick who ends up being great. The Giants, who knows what they're going to do in free agency. There's too much that still has to happen between now and week 1 of the regular season. And then the factor that always affects how a season goes, it's injury. We know they're going to happen.
Injuries.
We just don't know when, to whom, and for how long the guy is going to be out. But the Cowboys season, down the crapper last year, once Dak Prescott broke his ankle. Well, I'm not saying it could happen to him again. I don't like to name names because I don't want to be accused of jinxing anyone. But all it takes is one key injury, and everything changes. I remember the year when the 49ers played the Buccaneers. I think it was 97. Were you on the Bucs beat then? 97?
I was on the Bucs beat then. It was 97.
Remember?
Yes.
Was it 97 when Warren Sapp grabs Jerry Rice's face mask while Rice is running in reverse, tears his ACL?
First game of the year.
And that's that. And that changes everything. That was back when Jerry Rice still had a lot of gas in the tank. That changes everything at that point. It just gives you a different feel, so you never know when that's going to happen. That's part of this too. But this is the time of year where you want everyone to be excited and optimistic, and we'll worry about wins and losses when September, October, November, and December roll around. I still think the Cowboys can be very good. I'm fascinated to see what they do in Mike McCarthy's second year. You know, for as much as we'd like to say now that the pressure is on Dak Prescott, or the Prescott's on Dak pressure, either way, they both work. Yeah, the pressure's on Dak Prescott. The pressure's on Mike McCarthy in year 2. It's not like they're going to fire him after 2 years, but his broader legacy was undermined by the way he coached last year. If he does have Dak fully healthy this year, wire to wire with that $40 million a year contract, and he can't get it done, it's going to be another giant black mark on the resume of Mike McCarthy, Charean.
Yeah, and you look at all the coaches, Mike, who have won Super Bowls and gone elsewhere. Jimmy Johnson goes to Miami. Seifert goes to Carolina. All those guys. We had a ton of guys that moved around to second teams after they won a Super Bowl. Even Tom Flores. I mean, he almost didn't get in the Hall of Fame because what he did in Seattle, his record was so bad. So when you go to that second team, it hasn't been done very often where you can produce. And this is Mike McCarthy's chance to show he can produce. But, I don't know how long they're going to give him in Dallas. Jerry doesn't like paying coaches off. We know that. I think he does get beyond this season. But if they don't get in the playoffs this season, I think he's really going to be on the hot seat going into 2022. He's going to have to produce something, or they're probably going to move on to somebody else. As Stephen pointed out, Jerry's not getting any younger, and he only has a certain number of years. We don't know how long that is, but he's in his upper set. What is he, 78 now? So, he's getting up there where he needs to win another Super Bowl if he's going to do it in his lifetime.
Watch that guy live to be 98 and ultimately win 3 or 4 more Super Bowls. But that's been a common theme in recent years. I remember when Tony Romo on the bus right about the time they unveiled the thing. In Indiana, somewhere, he was on the bus, and he was joking with Jerry, and he said, and I think Jerry told the story during one of his sessions on the bus in Indianapolis where all the reporters come on and hang out with him, and maybe he spikes the punch with Johnny Walker Blue, but he said that Tony said, I only got about 4 years left, and Jerry, you only got about 4 years left. And, Jerry's been a good sport about that reality, but there is an urgency there, and we'll see if the Cowboys can get any closer to something they haven't done since 1995, win the Super Bowl, and also haven't been back to the NFC Championship game since 1995.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.